Shabbat Yom, brothers and sisters, Hebrews in Jamaica, the Caribbeans, the West, to the four corners of the earth scattered greetings. This Shabbat lesson, we're going to title it Daniel in the Lion's Den. Daniel in the Lion's Den, brothers and sisters, right? The story of Daniel in the Lion's Den teaches us about the promises and faithfulness of Elohim, even if we feel like everything has been lost, right? King Darius was ruler over Babylon and had an appointment with several men to help him govern and lead Daniel. The leader of advisors was a man who believed in Elohim and followed Yahuwah's commands. The other men did not like Daniel and did not want him in charge, so they devised a way to get rid of Daniel. These men knew that Daniel served the Elohim of Israel, Yashrael. They told King Darius to make a new law in which people would worship and pray to only the king, and if they worship or pray to other gods, they would be thrown into the den of lions. The starving lions would eat and kill the lawbreaker. Daniel understood the new law, but committed in his heart to remain steadfast in his prayer and praise Yahuwah. Daniel prayed 3 times a day with his windows open. When the men saw Daniel and brought accusation against him to King Darius, the king was devastated because he favored Daniel. The king knew he could not change the law, and Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. Let's go to the scriptures, brothers and sisters. Daniel 6, right? Okay, brothers, take a look at the screen, right? Let's go to Daniel 6. We're going to read Daniel 6, right? 16 of the KJV. It pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom, with 3 administrators over them. One of them was Daniel. The satraps were made accountable to them so that the king might not suffer loss, right? So satraps are governors, brothers and sisters, who were appointed by the king to rule provinces, right? So that's what satraps mean. When you see that in scripture in Daniel 6, that's what it means. Satrap means governors or administrators, right? So it pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps, governors, right, to rule throughout the kingdom, with 3 administrators over them, and one of whom was Daniel. The satraps, governors, were made accountable to them so that the king might not suffer loss. Now Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. At this, the administrators and the satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, and they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him, because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. Finally, these men said, "We will never find any basis for charges against this man Daniel, unless it was something to do with the law of his Elohim." So this administrator and satraps went as a group to the king and said, "May King Darius live forever." The royal administrators, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or human being during the next 30 days, except to you, your majesty, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Now your majesty issued a decree and put it in writing so that it cannot be altered, in accordance with the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed. So King Darius put in the decree in writing. Now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his Elohim, just as he had done before. Then these men went as a group and found Daniel praying and asking Elohim for help. So they went to the king and spoke to him about his royal decree. "Did you not publish a decree that during the next 30 days anyone who prays to any god or human being except to you, your majesty, would be thrown into the lion's den?" The king answered, "The decree stands in accordance with the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed." Then they said to the king, "Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Yehuda, pays no attention to you, your majesty, or to the decree you put in writing. He still prays 3 times a day. When the king heard this, he was greatly distressed. He was determined to rescue Daniel and made every effort until sundown to save him. Then the men went as a group to the king Darius and said to him, "Remember, your majesty, that according to the law of the Medes and Persians, no decree or edict that the king issued can be changed." So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, "May your Elohim, whom you serve, continually rescue you." A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the ring of his nobles, so that Daniel's situation might not be changed. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night without eating and without any entertainment being brought to him, and he could not sleep. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, "Daniel, servant of the living Elohim, has your Elohim whom you serve continually be able to rescue you from the lions?" Daniel answered, "May the king live forever. My Elohim sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight. Nor have I ever done any wrong before you, your majesty." The king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den, and when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him, because he had trusted in his Elohim. At the king's command, the men who had falsely accused Daniel were brought in and thrown into lion's den, along with their wives and children, and before they reached the floor of the den, the lions overpowered them, crush all their bones. Then King Darius wrote to all the nations and people of every language in all the earth, may you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that every part of my kingdom people must fear and reverence the Elohim of Daniel, for he is the living Elohim, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed, his dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lion. So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. You see, brothers and sisters, this is how government must rule, in righteousness. Because children of Israel has a history of righteous government, and our government was established on the commandments of the Most High, right? But the problem comes in when we stray from the Most High's word and try to do our own thing, and we end up being cast off into judgment, right? But we're going to get back there soon, brothers and sisters. But first we got to weed out all the rebellious among us, all the raccoons among us, all the reprobate mindset among us. You know what I mean? Once we weed them out, and the remnant that is left, we're gonna go back and build up the walls of Zion and the tabernacle of Dar within us. Right, brothers and sisters? Okay, brothers and sisters. So 7 things to know about the story of Daniel in the lion's den, right? When the biblical character Daniel is pictured, he is often next to lions. Why is this? Who was this man, and why was he thrown into the lion's den? The story of Daniel, made up of 12 chapters which are full of suspense, godly character, and beautiful evidence of Elohim's faithful presence even in hard times and circumstances. Let's dive into one of the most famous stories of the Bible, Daniel in the lion's den, right? What is the story of Daniel in the lion's den? Daniel was a Jewish young boy, a Yehudim, right? Daniel was a Yehudim young man who served as a high-ranking official in the king's court, but his colleagues resented his success and favor before the king, and so it is recorded in Daniel 6 that they created a plot by which Daniel's fate would land him in trouble with the law and would result in his death. When Daniel was punished for praying to Elohim by being thrown into a den of lions, Elohim miraculously spared his life by shutting the mouths of the lions. So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, "May your Elohim who you serve continually rescue you." A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the rings of his nobles, so that Daniel's situation might not be changed. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night without eating and without any entertainment being brought to him, and he could not sleep. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, "Daniel, servant of the living Elohim, as your Elohim whom you serve continually being able to rescue you from the lions?" Daniel answered, "May the king live forever. My Elohim has sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done any wrong before you, your majesty." The king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him, because he had trusted in his Elohim. At the king's command, the men who had falsely accused Daniel were brought in and thrown into the lion's den, along with their wives and children. And before they reached the floor of the den, the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. I issue a decree that every part of my kingdom people must fear and reverence the Elohim of Daniel, for he is the living Elohim, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not destroy, his dominion will never end. Daniel 6:6-24, 26. Right, brothers and sisters. So 7 things to know about Daniel and the lion's den. 1, Daniel's name means Elohim is my judge. Right. 1. Daniel's name means Elohim is my judge. The name Daniel comes from the Hebrew word Elohim is my judge. Right? The meaning of Daniel's name is very appropriate for one who chooses to please Elohim rather than man. His attitude is similar to that of the Apostle Paul, who said, "For am I now seeking the approval of man or Elohim, or am I trying to please man? If I were still trying to please man, I will not be a servant of the Mashiach. If I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of the Mashiach. If I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of the Mashiach." Galatians 1:6. Believers can learn from these examples and say along with the parents who named Daniel, "Elohim is my judge." 2. Daniel was born in Jerusalem but taken captive to Babylon as a young man. The Bible character Daniel was born into a noble family in Jerusalem but was taken into captivity as a young man and brought to Babylon. He and several other captives were selected as being young men without any physical defect, good looking, suitable for instruction in all wisdom, knowledgeable, perceptive, and capable of serving in the king's palace. Daniel 1:4. And were trained for 3 years before officially beginning their jobs as servants of the king. 3. Daniel and his friends were faithful in their work and faithful to Elohim. From their earliest days in Babylon, Daniel and his companions Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were characterized by simultaneously faithfulness in their duties and faithfulness to Elohim, though they excelled in their training and service and were even renamed. Daniel became Belshazzar, Mishael became Shadrach, Mishael became Meshach, right? And Azariah became Abednego. Their primary identity as devoted servants of Elohim remain unchanged. It is recorded that Elohim gave these 4 young men knowledge and understanding in every kind of literature and wisdom. The king interviewed them, all of the trainees, and among all of them no one was found equal to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they began to serve in the king's court in every matter of wisdom and understanding, and that the king consulted them about, he found them. 10 times better than all the diviner, priests, and mediums in his entire kingdom. Daniel 1:17-20. Daniel's companions went on to have their faithfulness to Elohim tested and proved when they refused adultery and were thrown into a fiery furnace as punishment, but emerged unscathed. Daniel 3:1-30. Many years passed, and Daniel continued serving each king in succession and rising through the ranks. Eventually, he was appointed to a high administrative position in the kingdom along with two others, but Daniel distinguished himself above the administrators and satraps. Again, satraps, brothers and sisters, are governors of the provinces appointed by the king. Because he had extraordinary spirit, so the king planned to set him over the whole realm. Daniel 6:3. 4. Daniel was above reproach in his work. The other administrators and those they managed felt resentful about Daniel's success, so plotted to bring him down somehow. But they could find no charge or corruption, for he was trustworthy, and no negligence or corruption was found in him. Daniel 6:4. And the plotters realized they would have to figure out a way to get the king to penalize Daniel for his faith. 5. Daniel was targeted and penalized for his faith. The plotting administrators went to the king and proposed a new law which in their legal system was unable to be changed once it was made, that no one could pray to any Elohim except the king himself, and that anyone who broke this law would be thrown into a den of lions. The king signed the law, and Daniel continued faithfully with his habit of praying 3 times a day in front of the windows of his house, facing toward Jerusalem. The administrators caught him in the act, then went to the king to report on Daniel's newly illegal activity. The king was distressed because he cared about and respected Daniel, but even he could not repeal a law that had already gone into effect. So down Daniel went into lions den, to what everyone assumed would be certain death. 6. Daniel experienced Elohim's faithfulness in an unlikely rescue. Though from an early perspective Daniel's situation looked hopeless, he trusted Elohim and was spared. After a night alive in the lion's den, Daniel emerged unharmed, telling the king, "My Elohim sent his angel and shut the lion's mouth, and they have not harmed me because I was found blameless before him." Daniel 6:22. 7. Daniel's deliverance resulted in people all over the kingdom hearing about Daniel's Elohim. The king was overjoyed that Daniel was unarmed. He had realized that the other administrator had tricked him into making a law that would hurt Daniel. So he put into effect another law telling people to fear Daniel's Elohim, saying, right, "I issue a decree that in all my royal dominion people must tremble in fear before the Elohim of Daniel, for he is living Elohim, and he endures forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his dominion has no end. He rescues and delivers. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. For he has rescued Daniel from the paw of the lions." Daniel 6:26-27. What is the lesson of Daniel in the lion's den, brothers and sisters? His story encourages those who follow Elohim to focus more on what says about them than what others say about them. His story encourages those who follow Elohim to focus more on what says about them than what others say about them. His deliverance shows believers that Elohim is able to rescue us even from the most impossible circumstances, and we can trust that sometimes those very impossible circumstances may be the means by which Elohim's name is made known to others. There are many other things to know from Daniel's story, which is recorded over 12 chapters. The whole book is edifying reading for anyone who wants to be faithful in their own work and wants to grow in their trust of Elohim's faithfulness towards those who serve him. Right? Okay, brothers and sisters, we're gonna leave it with a Shabbat a Shabbat Psalms, right? We're gonna live with a Shabbat Psalms, brothers and sisters. Tehillim, Psalms 119, Tehillim, Psalms 119, colon 1 to 8 from Sefer Bible, right? Aleph. Blessed are the perfect in the way who walk in the Torah of Yahuwah. Blessed are those who observe his witnesses, who seek him with all their heart. Yes, they shall do no unrighteousness. They walk in the ways, they walk in his ways. You have commanded us to guard your orders diligently. Oh, that my ways were established to guard your laws. Then I would not be ashamed. When I look into all your commands, I thank you with uprightness of heart. When I learn the right rulings of your righteousness, I guard your laws. Oh, do not leave me entirely. Right? I'm going to repeat that again, brothers and sisters. Tehillim, Psalms 119, 1 to 8. Aleph. Blessed are the perfect in the way. So Aleph means the beginning, right? Aleph. Blessed are the perfect in the way, who walk in the Torah of Yahuwah. Blessed are those who observe his witnesses, who seek him with all their heart. Yes, they shall do no unrighteousness. They shall walk in his ways. You have commanded us to guard your orders diligently. Oh, that my ways were established to guard your laws. Then I would not be ashamed when I look into all your commands. I thank you with uprightness of heart when I learn the right rulings of your righteousness. I guard your laws. Oh, do not leave me entirely, brothers and sisters. So, you see, the commandments is light and a lamp unto the feet of the believers. You know, oh, if my people will come at his laws, commandments, and statutes, your situation will be improved. You know what I mean? It's the mindset, the projection of your mindset, and your susceptibility of absorbing the lies of the wickedness of this world. And you will not emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Right? You got to go research, you got to read, you got to study the scriptures. You are in the scriptures, brothers and sisters. The world is dying, the system is failing. You understand, brothers and sisters? The system is dying, the system is failing, brothers and sisters. The illusion is coming unraveled. And the reality of things is being exposed before your eyes, brothers and sisters. And the only way you could escape is pending judgment coming upon this earth if you come back to these laws, commandments, and statutes and forsake religion. You understand? Forsake religion and come back to these laws, commandments, and statutes. The 10 Commandments, the dietary laws. You understand? Most of you are already practicing it without even realizing that you're practicing it. But the consciousness comes in when you acknowledge and practicing it, because you have the knowledge, you know what you're doing. You have awareness of what you're doing. You understand? And in that doing and in that practicing, you get your blessing. You understand, brothers and sisters? Flee religion, flee Christianity. So-called black people in Jamaica, Trinidad, Haiti, St. Louis, United States. You understand? Australia. You know what I mean? You know, Puerto Rico. I'm talking about the African population. Afro. You know what I mean? The same in Cuba, Afro. You see what I mean? Venezuela, Africa, Brazil, Afro. You know, we all need to come back to these laws, commandments, and statutes, because the sad thing about it is not all of us going to be saved. Not all of us going to be saved, brothers and sisters. You know, because many of you are too wicked and stiff-necked, and you will not change for nothing. No matter the proof. You know what I mean? You claim you follow the Most High, but you deny his commandments. You're still living in wickedness. You still eat whatever you want to eat. You know what I mean? A lot of you like to come and use Paul's writing about, you know what I mean? You know, let no man judge you of the food that you eat, right? A matter of fact, okay, brothers and sisters, Colossians 2, right? Colon 16. Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of any holiday and holiday or the new moon or of the Sabbath day. So what that means, brothers and sisters, right? Because Christians like to use this, so what that means, right? Okay, brothers and sisters, right? So let's break it down. To the warning against speculative error succeeds a warning against two practical superstitions. The first is simply the trust in obsolete Jewish ordinance, the mere shadow of the Mashiach, with which we are familiar in the earlier form of Judaism, the sacrificial of the lambs, the bullocks, and this is a mere shadow of the Mashiach. Because once the Mashiach come on the scene, brothers and sisters, he's a more perfect and permanent sacrifice. So, you know, I mean, I'm giving you two lessons one today, brothers and sisters, right? Because it's a spin-off because of my thought process. So I was going to explain a little bit about that process so you could understand, because Christians like to use this this verse, Colossians 2:6, and justify their pork eating and all manner of things they want to do. You see, brothers, do not understand the scriptures of what they claim they read, right? And practicing their sun worship every Sunday, which is the wrong day to worship the Most High. He didn't ordain that day, but the Shabbat. But anyways, but let's continue, brothers and sisters, right? So that's the shadow of Christ, right? The sacrificial of the lambs and the bullock and so forth, with which we are familiar in the early form of Judaism. But the second presents much strangeness and novelty. It is the worship of angels. You see that today in the Orthodox churches, the Catholic churches, the worship of angels and saints and Mary. Mary worship and all those idolatry, brothers and sisters. And you remember in the scripture when the angel appeared before John, I believe, right? And John bowed down to the angel. The angel said, no, do not bow down to me. I'm your fellow servant. So the angels today don't worship me, worship Elohim, Yahuwah, through his holy son Yahushua, Mashiach. In a voluntary humility, inconsistent with the belief in an intimate and direct union with the Mashiach, our head, right? Let no man therefore judge you. What that means, brothers and sisters? What that means, let no man judge you. That is, impose his own laws upon you, right? That means his own law, his own thought process, what he thinks you should do, instead of allowing himself to be guided by the commandments and the spirit of the Ruach HaKodesh and his word, right? And you could see a reference in Colossians 2:8, right? Let's look at that, brothers and sisters. Okay, brothers and sisters, as you can see on your screen, right? Colossians 2:8, right? Be aware, lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, right? After the rudiments of the world, and not after the Mashiach. So that the saint you, it lines up perfectly with Colossians 2:16 when it says, you know what I mean, you know, let no man therefore judge you, meaning imposing their own laws and not the laws of the Most High. Sunday worship is the tradition of man, brothers and sisters, also. That's exactly what I mean, and it ties in with this: be aware lest any man spoil you through philosophy, through his own laws, through his own idea, right? Oh, I'm going to eat this, I'm going to eat that because this is what I feel is your own idea, your own philosophy. Or you're going to eat pork, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. That's your own philosophy, that's your own ideals. You know what I mean? On top of what you have been taught by the system and your religious institutions, you know, they promote their own tradition of man, hence tradition of man, brothers and sisters, right? And for more references, you can, you know, go read Romans 14:13, Romans 14:10, right, brothers and sisters? And in meat or in drink, or rather in eating and drinking, we see by the context that the immediate reference is to the distinction of the meats under the Hebraic law, right? And it's not done away with. The law has never been done away with, brothers and sisters, right? Because Yahushua said he comes to fulfill the law, not to break it. So if the law is done away, why would the Mashiach say such a thing? You know, this is what I tell you about the tradition of man. You gotta fear the religion and tradition of man, brothers and sisters, because it's gonna lead you to hell. Right? So I hope you understand and grasp the situation and the concept, and you go do your research and studies for yourself, brothers and sisters, right? And grow in spirit, in wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, right? On that note, brothers and sisters, Bruk Yahuwah, Tizivaho Bruk Yahusha Mashiach, Shina Shina Veshina, best love and shalom.